Hi, this is Graham from Magical Learning,
And Annette.
and we're going to do a joint book review today for something a little different. Before we jump into the book review, I would like to point out that if you're noticing, particularly if you need to turn the volume up, that there's a lot of weird background noise. It's actually the sound of the waves breaking on the beach just outside the place where we're staying at in Cairns in far north Queensland. So we thought it would be a nice background. It's not static, it's not terrible audio, it's just nature.
Yeah. So the book we're going to talk about today is
Matthew McConaughey's autobiography, simply titled Green Lights. I'm going to hand over to you first. Your initial thoughts having read the book.
So I loved this book so much that I read it in a day, and part of the reason we're doing this book review together is I also thought Graham would love it, so I shared it with him as well. I really love it because it's not a self-help book. It's really, what happened was apparently Matthew had been keeping diaries for the last 35 years, and he decided that at 50 it was worth going away and just reflecting on those. So he took himself off to the desert and basically went through those diaries and found things that were lessons, adventures, etc., that helped him sort of put his life into perspective. So I really loved it, and yeah, it showed me a whole stack of stuff I had no idea about.
Cool. My initial impression, partway through the book and having finished it and I stopped to think about it, was partly my reaction was one of incredulity, because some of the things he talked about in the book just sounded so unusual that my initial thing was, did that really happen? Did his eldest brother really knock his father out with a bit of 42 because they had a fight, because his father wanted to see whether his first son was ready to be a man, and that's how you showed that you were a man in the part of the world that they came from. So when I read that, I thought, okay, that's different. It puts a whole different spin on the idea of dysfunctional family, but what family is fully functional anyway? I love his honesty.
Yes.
I love that, and one of the other things that came out for me was that he's actually kept all of his journals and he's gone back through them. And Danette and I have both been journaling on and off for a number of years. I have probably the last 3 or 4 years with the journals still at home, but I rarely, if ever, go back over them. Journaling for me is not a process of keeping information for later on. It's just a way of being able to process things, and then normally at some point I'll trash them, and I'm sort of okay with that. But I'm glad that Matthew McConaughey hung on to his. What did you think about the bumper stickers?
I love the bumper stickers. So he has this concept of bumper stickers. They could be lyrics, one-liners, things that people have said that aren't too inflammatory or anything. And for me, one of my favourite ones, and I really like this towards the end, and I'm looking down so I can read it word for word, if we all made sense of humour the default emotion, we'd all get along better. And for me, a number of those bumper stickers really gave me an insight into his philosophies, things that interested him. And from a journaling diary perspective, I like the fact that he's captured other people's thoughts, lyrics, etc. along the way during his journey, and used them as things that could be funny for him, but also things that gave him insight as well. What about you? What was one of your favourite ones?
So some of the things that, a couple of things that resonated with me, one was be less impressed and more involved. And that was an insight for Matthew that came a little bit of pain behind it, as is often the case for us as human beings, where he realised at some point after he had, the first time around, become quite famous, so he'd had a couple of hit movies, movie studios were looking to sign him up for new movies, he was making lots of money, people were recognising him on the street, but he realised that as you become more and more impressed with your fame, with your achievements, you actually become less involved in life. So it's almost like you're a bystander looking at how awesome you are, rather than actually being involved in living. So that really stood out for me.
And one of the things that I really liked about his life was when it became too much, so say Fame, when it first happened, became too much, he had the presence of mind to be able to take himself away and get back to himself and get to know himself again. And again, one of the bumper stickers I loved is, I travelled to restore my faith in mankind. So getting back to himself and seeing, the beauty in others, even situations that maybe didn't work out how he thought they should,
Yep.
that by taking that time to step away and become more present, it made sense. And it sort of comes to the title. So Green Lights really refers to travelling through life, a bit like going with the flow. And sometimes the yellow or the red lights actually are just maybe not now, or maybe this isn't the way forward. So that stepping away from his life really gave him that opportunity to look back, reflect, and then go, you know what, I'm going to look for those green lights. So I love that. What about you? Any other insights?
So the travel thing, the quote that you shared a minute ago also reminded me of one of the other things he wrote in the book, which was to learn what we know, sometimes we have to leave what we know. And so a big part of his growth and personal development has been going off into the unknown. He shares a story about wet dreams. I'm not going to tell. I don't want to give away everything in the book. You absolutely should read it. But some of his experiences around having the same wet dream twice, but taking two different interpretations of that led to, again, travel and some amazing experiences.
I loved, all of the stories. One that really resonated with me, because it sort of took me back to my childhood. I certainly didn't create something this big, but he, one summer, it was just him and his dad, and so he was wandering through the woods and found a site where they were...
The timber yard, or lumber yard, as they call them,
and anyway, over the summer he stole from that particular timber yard and built himself a 13-storey tree house. From all of these stolen materials, and he'd get up super early and he'd stay out quite late. And while I'm not in any way advocating the stealing stuff, the fact that he just created this thing in the middle of nowhere is pretty extraordinary.
Sorry, just on that, again, values and beliefs that we attach to as we grow up, and the influences of others around us, including parents. One of the lessons that he learned from his father early on was that doing something wrong, like stealing, isn't a crime or isn't a sin. The sin is getting caught. So if you're going to do something wrong, don't get caught. The story about stealing timber was making sure that he didn't get caught doing it.
And again, not advocating stealing in any way, shape or form. His honesty in his stories and sharing those.
It is very much, I think, a warts and all account of his experiences in life. He talks about experiences with drug, with being abused, with obviously with theft, with minor crime as a wild, crazy teenager. One of the other things that really stuck out for me was in a period in his life after he'd married, had kids, settled down, found his dream partner, and decided that he had built a reputation as being the ideal lead actor in romantic comedies and didn't want to do them anymore. But they were the only scripts that the studios were sending him because he was a bankable star. So he said, no, I don't want to do any more. So they stopped sending him scripts completely. So he was not making any money at all, really, for a couple of years. But he had a principle. He wanted to do something different. And one of the things I loved about him was he just stuck to that. And what came out of that was a series of movies, including the Dallas Buyers Club, which earned him an Oscar. So, anyway, did you want to wrap up?
I would just say I would absolutely recommend this book. It is just a really lovely account of his life, and Catching Green Lights, I think we all should look to do more of that, particularly after the year that we had last year. So for me, absolutely on my top 10 to read.
Awesome. So there's the book, Green Lights, Matthew McConaughey. If you don't already have a print or an audiobook copy, please go and get yourself one and put some time aside to read it. It will change the way you think about what's possible.
Yes. Thank you.
Have a
Until
great
next
week.
time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye bye.